This is a WMUR Commitment 2024 special. Countdown to the New Hampshire primary.
In my humble opinion, New Hampshire does it the best.
The first in the nation field is still in flux tonight, less than 2 days before Granite Staters go to the polls.
And now another Republican has just dropped out of the race tonight. The latest development in what has been, you could say, an unusual New Hampshire primary. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Steve Botari.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jennifer Vaughn. Ron DeSantis announced late this afternoon that he was suspending his campaign, and that leaves just two major Republicans left in this race, former President Donald Trump and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. Both are holding campaign events tonight on the Seacoast. Let's first begin with Tim Callery in Manchester, and that is where DeSantis was supposed to speak with supporters tonight, Tim.
That's right, Jen. Ron DeSantis causing some changes in this primary as Tuesday quickly approaches. He was supposed to meet with voters at a restaurant here in downtown Manchester, but he canceled that event after announcing he was stepping out of this race. Ron DeSantis made that announcement via video from Florida, his team confirming tonight that he will remain in Tallahassee. DeSantis says after his second place finish in Iowa, he and his team prayed and deliberated on a way forward. They looked at what he could do to create a more favorable outcome here in New Hampshire, but ultimately they decided to suspend his campaign. Ron DeSantis was once seen as a popular candidate in this race, but over time he could not gain enough traction to overpower former President Donald Trump. In his announcement, Governor DeSantis says he is endorsing Donald Trump. The two sparred a bit during this campaign, but DeSantis says it's clear to him that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump a second chance.
He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the old Republican guard of yesteryear, a repackaged form of warmed-over corporatism that Nikki Haley represents.
Ron DeSantis also thanked his wife Casey and their children for their support and time on the campaign trail. Reporting live in Manchester, I'm Tim Callery, WMUR News 9.
Let's bring in WMUR Political Director Adam Sexton now to take a closer look at everything going on. And there's a lot of action here, Adam, but different than we're used to. In particular, this rapidly shrinking field of candidates. Usually they'll make it through Iowa, come to New Hampshire, and then you might see a few drop. But we are seeing them drop consistently one after the other. Ron DeSantis just today.
Right. And the idea of a truly binary race, even though there are many candidates on that Republican ballot, at the top tier, it's now just Trump and Haley. It's been a long time since we've had that on the Republican side. Obviously, Democrats, Bernie and Hillary in 2016, but there was Martin O'Malley for a little bit there too. You have to go all the way back to like Al Gore and Bill Bradley for a true one-on-one race in some ways. It's been a long time since we've had this where it's really just one or the other on election day for the voters of New Hampshire, because they're used to having so many more. There have been so many of these campaigns in the last few cycles that we've had these bevy of candidates, not this time around.
Well, Adam, adding to the list of things that are unusual this time around, the lack of debates here in New Hampshire. So usually post-Iowa, we see at least the WMUR debate. CNN also had one scheduled. So Nikki Haley's decision not to debate, have we seen an impact with Granite State voters?
So Emerson just released a poll tonight, and they actually asked people, does it make you more or less likely or not at all, do you care at all, based on not debating? Most people didn't care at all, right? About 73 or 74%, but 19% of people said they were less likely to support Nikki Haley based on her decision not to debate. That's not a big number, but it's enough to make a difference when she's trying to build a coalition to win.
And these candidates have been here. Let's talk a bit about President Trump and this enduring connection to the New Hampshire Republican base here. He hasn't been here as much. When he does these events, they're big events. He can fit more people in, but he's certainly not doing the diner tour. He's not stopping by a hockey game.
Right.
It's different for him.
And I think people are like, well, why doesn't he do X, Y, Z, and why does this work for him? It's because he has a visceral or an emotional connection with his supporters, which is so unique for politics. That's not something you usually see in American politics. And so this emotional connection carries him, and it is carrying him right now.
Okay, Adam, thank you very much. Good perspective. Let's talk more about the former president right now. He has taken the stage in Exeter. This is his live event happening right now. People did line up early there today to get inside.
And we have WMUR's Marissa Tansino, who talked with some of the people who were there in the line, some of them for hours, Marissa, and they're also reacting to Ron DeSantis' endorsement of Trump.
Steve, Jen, that's right. They started to file in the doors here just after 4 o'clock. But before they went in, they told us that they were happy to hear that Governor Ron DeSantis dropped out of the presidential race, endorsed Trump. But ultimately, they say they believe the relationship between the two of them is just ruined at this point. The border and the cost of everything from groceries to gas at the top of minds of some people out here today. Many of his supporters say they aren't happy with the way the current administration has handled issues like the economy and the border crisis, so they are hoping to see change in November.
Don't think this great superpower can't die in an instant if the wrong people are in charge, and the wrong people are in charge.
Drill. He's going to drill, and then he's going to close the border.
So for many people, this actually wasn't their first time coming to a rally for the former president. Many of them telling us they were at his rally in Manchester last night. We're live in Rochester. Marissa Tansino, WMUR News 9.
Also right now, Nikki Haley headlining a rally in Exeter with a special guest, Judge Judy.
WMUR's Ariel Metropolis just sat down with Judge Judy and Haley. She's live outside of the rally. What they have to say, Ariel?
Jen, Steve, this is only the second time that Judge Judy has publicly dipped her toe into politics, but earlier this month she endorsed Haley. And you might remember back in 2020, Judge Judy endorsed Democratic presidential candidate and former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg. Judge Judy says she believes Haley is the best choice for this moment, particularly given the fact that she believes former President Trump and President Biden are both too old.
Put your money where your mouth is. You got to get up off your behind if you believe that and travel 1,700 miles if that's what it takes to tell the people of New Hampshire that it's a critical time for them.
And coming up at 11 tonight, we'll have more highlights from our sit down. We're live in Exeter. Ariel Metropolis, WMUR News 9.
We're back now with Dr. Nathan Schrader from New England College, so we got to follow Judge Judy here on the programming schedule. Let's talk voter turnout for a second, because we saw in Iowa somewhat lower turnout on the GOP side. Now, there's a question of, was it the cold or was it other factors? And then we've also seen the Secretary of State's predictions for here in New Hampshire. What are you thinking when it comes to Tuesday and what we're going to see here in New Hampshire?
Well, I think there's a lot of excitement. That's where I was listening to Secretary Scanlon's comments earlier. I think he's right. They're more of the independent or undeclared voters. They're going to go and break for the Republican primary this time because there's just more action perceived to be there, and especially now that we're down to the actual head-to-head race. Nikki Haley was the one just saying a few days ago, it's now a head-to-head race. Now it really is, right? It's not just rhetoric anymore. That's reality. But I would say I think that there might be more Democratic voters in that primary than the 88,000 that the Secretary suggested. And I don't mean to second guess Secretary Scanlon. I respect his predictions here, but there has been a bevy of excitement on the Democratic side as of late. The national focus on the Biden write-in campaign. There have been stories in all the national news outlets kind of focused on the unique nature of that, why it's happening, how it's happening. And also I've noticed just the crowd sizes seem to be growing a little bit for Dean Phillips, from what I understand from his town halls. And I attended one last weekend and sort of saw that too, that he's drawing more people out. Whether that means they're going to vote for him or not is another sort. That's a whole other question, but they're coming out to see him. So I think there's a growing amount of late interest on that Democratic primary because it's such a unique affair without the sitting president being involved.
Well, that's just it, Doctor. Does it make it even more uncertain, given it is a write-in, that it's really hard to know in some ways?
Yes. So one of the pitfalls of running a write-in campaign is that you don't just have to drive your supporters or voters out to the polls that day. You have to actually have them take the next step. They're not just filling in the bubble with next to your name. They have to actually write that name in. Now let me defend the New Hampshire electorate for a minute. New Hampshire has a highly educated electorate, a deeply involved electorate when it comes to civic affairs. I think that this might not work in many other states where voters don't pay as close attention round the clock to politics like they do here. I think the Biden write-in has a chance to work here because of those unique elements of New Hampshire, even though President Biden is sort of sidestepping New Hampshire, right, and ignoring New Hampshire in a way. He's still the incumbent Democratic president.
We shall see. Tuesday will give us so many answers that we have questions
Absolutely.
about right now. All right, Doctor, thank you. And we have much more ahead. Stay with us.
On the First in the Nation trail, some candidates go to Olympic-sized lengths to get the attention of Granite State voters, while others reach for normal activities like making breakfast.
I'll never forget who gave me a second chance, and I'll be there for you till the last dog dies. And I want you to remember.
I intend to win New Hampshire, and I